all traditional acting classes are essentially taught in one significant way the same way? Whether you're working with somebody who's teaching you Stanislavski, or Strasberg, or Meisner, or Stella Adler, or Uta Hagen, there's one thing they all have in common, all your teachers of the traditional acting classes. And those techniques are very different from each other. What they all have in common is that all the teachers teach reactively. Reactively. What do I mean by that? Well, students get up and do something. An exercise, an improv, a monologue, or a scene. And then the teacher reacts to what they did. The methodologies are different in what he then does. But it all starts with him reacting to what the student did. For instance, Joe and Mary are in a traditional class, and they do a scene from Night of the Iguana. While the scene is going on, the teacher is sitting out there among the class, is watching, and to himself he's saying, something's very wrong with this scene. What is it? And he's watching and he's watching, and he has a moment. He goes, I got it. They're leaving out the subtext. It's a hypothetical example. They're leaving out the subtext. You can substitute a million different things that an acting teacher might spot and see to fix and react to. For right now, I'm saying they left out the subtext. So the teacher gets up, the end of the scene, and he now has his theme for what he's teaching in that class. Subtext, ladies and gentlemen. This scene doesn't work because it's missing subtext. And he then gives a lecture to the whole class. Subtext, subtext. Subtext is when the scene is about something other than it's about. And he explains that, and he goes on and on. Okay, you all got it? And then he turns around, okay, Joe and Mary, and he works with them like a director. And he helps them to find what the subtext of the scene is, and then he coaches them how to play into it and on top of it, and he gets them to infuse the scene with subtext. And the scene now works. And 2 hours later, everybody goes, wow, this teacher is fucking great. That scene was so hot. Joe and Mary, boy, that's fantastic. You know, and then two more people get up, and then we start over again, and maybe this time he reacts, and it's not subtext. Maybe their character work is missing. Anyway, next day. Mary is a regular on Days of Our Lives. She shows up to work, and 2 hours before they're going to shoot her scene, they hand her sides. We rewrote the scene. Okay, I got 2 hours, fine. So she's in the hallway, she memorizes the new scene, she finds the actor she's doing the scene with, they rehearse, she's ready to go. 2 hours later, they call her to the stage, they're shooting the new scene. Cut to the booth. The director and the producer are watching. Oh, I think I'm going to vomit. Didn't you tell her that the scene has got subtext in it? Why isn't she playing the subtext? Well, I've been in here directing all the other scenes. You guys came in with the rewrite. Oh my God, she's so bad. How many more months do we have to keep her around here? When is her contract over? Now, how is this possible? The night before was Night of the Iguana. Subtext, subtext, subtext. The next day, on Days of Our Lives, she doesn't even see the scenes about subtext. How is this possible? Well, you guessed it. I'm going to tell you. Let's look at the nature of a scene in a traditional acting class. I want to suggest to you it's very much like a Broadway show. You know, one day you're walking in the streets on Broadway, you don't have a job. You get a phone call from your agent. You booked it. You go into rehearsal on Monday, you open in 5 weeks. Congratulations. Now that's the equivalent of Joe coming up to Mary and saying to Mary after class one night, listen, I just signed up for a scene for next month. Would you like to be my partner? And she says, yes. And he says, let's go to Starbucks next Saturday at 11 in the morning. You bring scenes that interest you. I'll bring scenes that I'm interested in. We'll read. We'll pick a scene. Good. They go to Starbucks at 5 to 11. They don't have a job. In Starbucks, they're reading scenes. They pick Night of the Iguana. Noon. They come out of Starbucks, and she knows, well, I'm going to play Maxine in Night of the Iguana, and he knows I'm playing the Reverend T. Lawrence Shannon in Night of the Iguana. Casting. Follow? Now, what happens after you get cast in a Broadway show? You go into rehearsal for a month. What happens to Joe and Mary after they left Starbucks having cast themselves in Night of the Iguana? They go into rehearsal, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long they give to it. And they rehearse their scene. What happens on Broadway when you have finished the rehearsal period? Opening night, right? What happens to Joe and Mary after they finished rehearsing? Well, it's the night they're going to do the scene in class. And it's just like an opening night on Broadway. You've been there. You've walked into class and said, hey, Mary, how are you? Don't talk to me. I'm getting into character. You got a cigarette? Just as nervous. Then the show opens on Broadway. At the end of the show, the curtain comes down. Right? What happens? The actors go across the street to Sardi's to get the reviews. Well, what happens in the class? They finish the scene, cut, whatever. They get the reviews. The critique is right then and there, right? And they get the reviews. So I'm trying to show you that there's a parallel between doing a scene and doing a Broadway show. Why do I want you to see this? Because everything that was learned in that class that night about subtext for Joe and Mary was a part of a whole Broadway-style production of Night of the Iguana. From Starbucks, rehearsals, do the scene, hear the critique. It's a whole package. And what they learned about subtext was a part of that package. Therefore, if a scene, for instance, the next day on Days of Our Lives, doesn't exactly resemble the scene from Night of the Iguana, they're not going to see the subtext issue. What they learned is too enmeshed in the one big project for them, their Night of the Iguana scene. And what about the rest of the class that night? When the teacher got up and he said, okay, subtext. Subtext is about what a scene's about, something that it's about. And he lectured for a half hour, gave examples, all of that. Do you think that these people learned about subtext? They didn't learn dick. They were informed about subtext. In the same way that earlier today I informed you that C-sharp triads work with an F major scale. You were informed about that. You didn't know that, but you were informed. Doesn't mean you can get up and do it. Well, the rest of the class that night who was informed about subtext, oh, that's interesting. But they can't get up and do it. But at least Joe and Mary, who had experiential training on the Night of the Iguana scene, they were given training. Do you understand? More than information. And she still couldn't see it because it was so completely attached to Night of the Iguana. That's the problem with reactive teaching. And improvisation technique stays way the hell away from that.